by the gasworks croft, dreamed a dream by the old canal, kissed my girl by the factory wall. Dirty old town, dirty old town. Heard a siren from the docks, saw a train set the night on fire, smelled the spring on the smoky wind. Dirty old town, dirty old town. Clouds are drifting across the moon, cats are prowling on their beat. Spring's a girl in the street at night. Dirty old town, dirty old town. I'm going to make a good sharp axe, shining steel tempered in the fire. We'll chop you down like an old dead tree. Dirty old town, dirty old town, dirty old town, dirty old town.
Took my love, took it down. I climbed a mountain and I turned around, and I saw my reflection in snow-covered hills till the landslide brought me down. Oh, mirror in the sky, what is love? Can the child within my heart rise above? Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I've built my life around you.
I found my...
Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls. Delighted to have you here at We Invented the Weekend. My name is Anna Jameson. I work at BBC Radio Manchester. And just behind me here, you'll see these beautiful banners. And there is an important kind of meaning behind them. They've been created by community groups with Mike's Studio Salford. So they're made up of Mike and Sean, who love to create and make up powerful words, bold colours, graphics, that's their kind of style. And they want to bring bright artworks to community and public spaces, which is why we thought it was perfect to have them here today. So I just wanted to explain why they're on stage. One of the groups bringing these works out towards the stage now are Salford's Loaves and Fishes. I don't know if you've heard of this charity. They're absolutely superb. I've spoken to them a number of times on BBC Radio Manchester, and they really help vulnerable people. And do you know what? Everyday people now who need food, drink, and support in difficult times. So just a huge round of applause, please, for Salford's Loaves and Fishes, who do, honestly, they are an incredible charity. I'm delighted now to start our next segment, and we are in for a treat today with the legend that is Peggy Seeger. But before, yes, that's the reaction we want. But before then, let's bring on the newly re-elected City Mayor for Salford, Labour's Paul Dennett.
Hello everyone. It's an absolute privilege to be here today introducing Peggy Seeger for this amazing and unique performance of the classical ballad, Dirty Old Town. Written by Peggy's late husband, Ewan MacColl, Dirty Old Town has become one of the most beloved, well-known and most covered songs ever released. An emotional homage to the city of Salford in all its industry, gritty beauty. Dirty Old Town was written for Ewan's 1949 play, Landscapes and Chimneys. Ewan remains one of Salford's most famous sons. Born in Salford as Jimmy Miller, Ewan has had a remarkable career which ranged from performing agitprop as a teenager communist with the red megaphones to co-founding the unconventional but theatre workshop and leading the folk revival in Britain, all whilst prolifically recording an incredible catalogue of folk music himself. Politically active throughout his life, Ewan was involved in historic local protest movements as a leading organiser of the Kinder Scout Mess Trespass and a veteran of the Battle of Bexley Square. Peggy, of course, is a folk legend in her own right. Born in New York to a family steeped in music, Peggy moved to the UK in the 1950s, where she fell in love with Ewan. Together, they created a wealth of music, as well as a remarkable series of radio ballads, intimately covering workers' lives and industries such as coal mining and fishing, and founded the London Critics Group. A lifelong agitator and socialist, Peggy has long been involved in protest movements, from vehemently opposing the Vietnam War in the 1960s to participating in the Greenham Commons Peace Camp. Peggy, along with her son Callum, will be giving a one-off performance of an abandoned verse of Dirty Old Town today, fittingly delivered in the city that inspired Ewan and helped give birth to this iconic song. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the great city of Salford, I'm truly honoured to introduce the one and only Peggy Seeger and the BBC's one and only Mike Sweeney. Thank you very much.
See you later, alligator.
Hello,
okay. Let's make sure everything's working. Can you hear us?
No. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? Although some would say I don't really need a microphone. I could just stand on the top of the building and do the radio programme. I want to welcome you all here, but very quickly, for those of you who have no idea who I am, I used to work on the docks here in 1970, and I worked down Agecroft Colliery during the 60s, and somehow ended up working for the BBC at my very, very late stage in life. It's an absolute privilege, though, to talk to this woman today and to find out more about an absolutely iconic piece of music. So, folk legend Peggy Seeger, Callum, her son, sits across from me. Let's have a round of applause, please. And in a way, a little bit of history, and we should recount this, that Peggy's the widow of Ewan MacColl. Ewan was born in Salford, songwriter, playwright, and as you heard from Paul, activist. Callum is one of their children. Ewan wrote the song The First Time I Saw Your Face, about falling in love with Peggy, about a bit of romance. Peggy is a multi-instrumentalist, a folk goddess. Oh, you don't mind me saying that, Peggy. Married to Ewan until his death in 1989, and sang Dirty Old Town with Ewan for decades. And she just recorded, and you're going to hear it, I think, over the weeks, the most beautiful version with the BBC Philharmonic right here at Dock 10 Studios at Media City. Dirty Old Town is globally iconic. It's a timeless classic against an industrial landscape, the romance of that landscape, but in a way, the horror of that landscape. And people are still falling in love with its lilting melody, its perfect lyrics, and of course there have been countless covers, mostly by the Pogues and the Dubliners, without massive chart success, and we'll talk about those covers, and a lot of people aren't really knowledgeable. It's about Salford. It's not about Dublin, it's not about Liverpool, it's about this city here, the city that I was born in. It's about Salford. And we are reclaiming that song today here in Salford for the city of Salford. So I hope you approve of that. But let's move on. It's not about me, it's about Peggy, it's about Callum. Tell us first of all, Peggy, how he came to write the song.
Well, I am delighted that you and Callum have stopped talking about football.
We're going to talk about football in a moment or two.
Yeah.
Now you can repeat your question, because I'm a Gemini. I have to hear it twice.
So, how did he come to write the song? What was the mechanics behind that?
Well, Ewan was very good at making stories up, but I don't think he made this one up. He was working with Joan Littlewood on their joint theatre workshop, and he was a playwright. He actually wrote 14 plays, very, very different from each other. And this song was encapsulated within a play called Landscape of Chimneys. it was kind of incidental at that point. He said that it was written to cover a scene change. But when I looked at the script of the play, it's really embedded right through. That's when I noticed the now famous abandoned verse. It wasn't abandoned. It probably was, God help the singer, it was probably kept in the play because it does not sing well. And it went like this, and it's the only performance this verse is ever going to get.
We are going to get a performance during this conversation, I hope. That would be lovely.
I was going to do it now, but you've interrupted me. But we can put it where you would like, because really it's your show.
As you can see, Peggy takes charge of everything, thank goodness.
Only for a while, then it's your wife. She's lovely.
Peggy Seeger.
Now, so he wrote it for a play. And it at the time, I don't think that it was taken out of the play to be sung solo. The first time I heard it was when Alan Lomax formed a group called the Manchester Ramblers. And it was the theme song. No, I think maybe Hard Times or Manchester Rambler was, which you're going to sing later, I think. So, yeah, no, it's a spoiler. No.
You're not supposed to.
Oh, I take it back. You didn't hear that, did you? No.
Sing the verse.
Okay, I'm going to sing, but I've got to wait till I have permission from Mike Sweeney to sing it now.
You have my massive permission, Peggy Seeger.
Now listen to how bad this is to sing. I hate singing it. Moon of steel in the cloudy sky, silver skin on the roofs of mills. Oh, dear me. Stars are sparks from the chimney stack. Dirty old town. Actually, the images are lovely. Silver skin on the roof of a mill. That's wonderful, but it bloomin' doesn't sing. And I think it was abandoned as part of the song because it doesn't equal the poetry of the rest of it. And also, 4 verses is enough. And you have to realize when a song is too long. So they took it out because it was bad and because the song was better without it. And I hope you are not envious of my hot water bottle up here.
Thank you for singing the verse. Peggy Seeger, everybody. So you're this middle-class woman from America. You've got this Salford scruff that you've met and fell in love with. He fell in love with you so much that he wrote a song about you. How did you two get together?
It was really because, actually, I wrote a book called First Time Ever so that I wouldn't have to answer questions over and over and over again. And it tells the whole story of when I first met him, and I thought he was the oddest person I'd ever seen in my life. His singing was very strange, and he also, at that time, had a part in the Thrupney Opera in which he was the balladeer, and he was made up to look 60. In actual fact, he was 40, and I was 20, so I had no business. I didn't want to have anything to do with him, really, at that time. I didn't fall in love with him first time ever. I didn't. He did me. You know? So he chased me relentlessly for 3 years until finally I just got tired of running. And it really worked, you know.
Do you know, his background was massively important to him. I mean, we're here now at what Salford Docks, Media City Darling, and I don't think anybody would have thought that Salford would ever become this. And at one point, it was a very poor, rundown. It was indeed a dirty old town. What was his background like in Lower Broughton, where he came from, do you think?
He was born in Coburg Street in Lower Broughton, and it was part of his courtship ritual to take me there very early in April of 1956. People court in very strange ways, and there's another one in the book that you'll just howl with laughter, where he took me backstage and ... So he took me to Salford very early, and I think it was to show me, like a bowerbird fills its nest with all kinds of things, and that one that has the fantastic, almost peacock. That's all right, I can sit without it. It was almost like a peacock just spreading his wings to show me where he came from. He called it a slum. And he was outraged when the next slum was built on it and took away the street names, and then that one was torn down. I don't like the word slum, although it comes from the word slumber, the idea of people sleeping in someone else's house. And back in the 1700s, I think slum meant a place for thieves and for bad boys to kind of sleep in. And since then, it has become a place that describes poverty and deprivation. And I don't know whether he would look at it as that way now, but he took me there. But he was tied to Salford, and he was terrified of not getting out of what it was then. And that's a pregnant silence. Oh, really. And it was a dirty old town, but I'll tell you, the dirt back then was industrial. Nobody threw away anything in the streets. First of all, I don't think there was plastic to throw away and all this throwaway stuff we have now. It was the filth of industry. And the Irwell was packed with all kinds of industrial junk. He nearly drowned in the Irwell. So it was a different kind of dirty old town.
I was just going to say, when I was growing up, because he brought us up in, you can tell by my accent, I'm not from round here. He brought us up in South London, in a kind of sleepy suburb. So when he used to talk about Salford, it was this mythical place that seemed to me something from a Dickens book. It was so grimy and awful and as Peggy said, just utterly filthy. But he was an interesting character in the, I don't know if anyone's ever seen the Woody Allen film Zelig, where the central character, whoever they're with, they become more like that. When he talked about Salford, because he'd kind of developed this neutral Middle English accent, but when he talked about Salford, his accent would change and he'd get more Mancunian. And it was like he'd revert back into it. And part of him, when he talked about Salford, was there. He was living it. But yeah, I don't know what he'd make of this now.
When I listen to you and to Peggy, with both of you now, although he saw the dirt and the poverty, I always felt, listening to the lyrics of that there was within that a romance and a love for the city.
It's a love-hate song. He loved the place and he hated the place.
He had a lot of friends here. We occasionally went back and visited them.
Yeah, and both the love and the hate are tied up in the song. So it is a romantic song. You know, the first verse, well, all the verses apart from the last verse are really a love song. And of course, in the last verse, he smashes the place up. It's a love-hate song, which in the Pogues version, which I love, but most people think it's about Dublin simply because every Irish artist who's anyone will wheel it out on Paddy's Day. And the version will always be na 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 na, be like that.
Stop, Callum.
Whereas the original version, which we'll do a little bit later, it's like that. So it's a little bit more, it's got more of the romance in it, it's more smoky, it's just different.
70 odd years on, we're talking about a song that's probably got more affection and love attached to it now than it ever has. Why do you think it stood the test of time so much?
Well, it's made roughly like a folk song, although that's a dangerous word to use these days because nobody can define what that means. But each line is a complete thought, and the lines don't rhyme with each other, so you don't have to remember a rhyme. It's a perfect length, And it describes so completely, maybe it's just because I knew him and he talked about it that way, a teenage boy just full of hormone and romance and love and looking at girls. He's lonely and he's in this dark, dirty industrial town with the sounds, because Salford was very noisy at that time with industry. And I think it's lasted because it can do for you what you want. It doesn't have to do what he wants, but you can take those lines and they are all in some way relevant to every one of us. Even in the bleachers when everybody's howling it out. Or in Tokyo, where apparently they sing it about the dirty parts of Tokyo. I mean, goodness, a Japanese person turned up at my last yeah. Yes, and they were singing it in Japanese for me, and it was about Tokyo. So you can take it to yourself as a city, you can take it to yourself as a person, as a group, as a community, wherever you are.
If you look at his talents, he was a playwright, he was a politician in a way in his early days within that informal politics. He wrote poems, he wrote songs, but how important to him do you think? I mean, we're talking about this one song. He wrote hundreds of songs, particularly for you, Callum, as he was your dad. How important do you think the song was to him, the songwriter?
No more important than any of the other songs he wrote. It's that kind of weird thing for songwriters that they'll write, like he did, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs, and then for some reason one song will catch the public imagination, and then that's what they're remembered for. And there's a kind of albatross around the neck. Yeah, it's a privileged one, but that's the only song you've ever written. And so I've met a few songwriters in that position who've written the one song that's become the huge hit that everyone remembers, and of course everyone wants to go, I've got this new album, and people in the audience are going, oh, play the big song. No, I want to play the new album. No, I want the big song. So there's a kind of resentment with it, actually, but he was proud of it, just as because it's a good song, it's successful. And that missing verse isn't a missing verse, it's a discarded verse, because he was a really good editor of his own songs, so he was very keen on cutting the fat out of a song. So if it didn't need that verse, it doesn't need it. So it's the right length, it holds your attention. But yeah, that was a long way round of saying no more proud than of any other song.
Do you think he discarded it, Peggy, because it just wasn't good enough?
Well, I have no idea, but he did know how to prune a song, how to hone a song. I have a little bit of an argument with him over one of the words in the song as we sing it, because one of the notes that you have to hold on a high note doesn't work. You know, you can hold ah, aw, e, oo. Those are all pure vowels. But ow, cats are prowling. So I've changed it on the recording. No, I didn't change the word. I just changed it off of that bloomin' high note where you have to hold a note that can't be held.
Did he ever talk to you about the process behind writing the play Landscape with Chimneys, how that came about?
Well, he wrote it for the theatre that he worked in. He didn't talk much about writing plays. He wrote songs as if they were plays. I mean, he had a wonderful theatrical sense. He really, really did. That's why he wrote songs in a number of different styles. And it really helped me with the critics group that we worked with to understand how songs are theatrical as well as theater is like music. He was quite an extraordinary talker, and he hardly ever stopped talking.
A bit like you, Mike.
Don't know whether I could concur with that or not. I've seen the play for the first time. I was at the Working Class History Museum in Salford, which, to my shame, I'd never been in. I know I've got a middle-class lifestyle now, but I still think of myself as a working-class Salford scruff, deluded though that may be. And so I read the play, and I was fascinated by it, by the romance, by the fact that when I was a kid, if you kissed girls, there were no clubs to go to. It was usually against a back wall somewhere or a croft somewhere. Would you, or what? Go on.
Anybody up against a wall?
Loads of times.
Oh, let me know about that.
My first ever kiss in Salford, her name was Betty Mayo, and I kissed her. We lived in Croft House. Flats are still there. The back wall doesn't have windows in it because it has chimneys going straight up. And I kissed Betty Mayo, sorry Betty, against this wall, I'm afraid, in Odsal.
Apologising to her after all this time.
Well, she might need the apology now. She might not want me out there. So, how do you feel about seeing that play out again? Because nobody, really, I say nobody in inverted commas, knows about it.
Well, people begin to talk about it as an old-fashioned play. But to be quite honest, at my age, I quite like old-fashioned. I really do. They had a directness, and sometimes there were a lot of cliches and a bit of naff stuff. But the issues were black and white, and now they're all colors. And maybe the black and white was what he was into, because he lived in black and white. He saw Salford as black and white. He didn't see it as colored in any way. Or I don't think so. I need other people's opinions on that, because some of you out there probably knew him. You know, how old would he be now? All right, 107 or something. No, maybe you're not here.
Well, personally, the plays, I think he was a way better songwriter than he was a playwright, which isn't denigrating him in any way. When I've read the plays, I just find them, because they're of their time. I mean, the first theatre group he was in, based here, was called the Red Megaphones. So it was an overtly political, all the plays were very politically slanted, and they were issue plays. So I find the plays very much head, and the best of his songs are a great marrying of the head and the heart. So going back to what makes it a great song, it's got poetry in it, but not too much poetry. It's not pretentious, it's relatable. But there's a humanity and there's an emotion and a romance in it that there wasn't particularly in the plays to me.
The plays weren't all like Landscape with Chimneys. One of them was a rewrite of Lysistrata. Another one was called Uranium 235, which was almost a scientific one. Then another one called The Other Animals, which is so literary that you almost can't follow it.
That's what I meant, head rather than heart.
Yeah, good for you. That was good. I like that. And good for you for a whole stack of things.
Has anyone else ever been on stage with their mum?
Or with their son.
I've heard about her sex life. I've heard about her first kiss. I've heard about where she and who she lost her virginity to. I even found out where I was conceived in front of an audience. And she even described the wallpaper. To which my only reply...
Not yours. Yours was a waterfall.
Oh, shut up. To which my reply was, if you can remember the wallpaper, it can't have been that good.
Don't you love family discussions?
Yeah.
Well, as far as cutting verses out of songs, we used to sing to Callum every night when he was little. And he knew the songs, he really did. So you'd sing a really long, slow ballad, and you'd be cutting out verses so that you wouldn't fall asleep yourself. And at the end, this little voice pops up, "You missed verse 35.
Still in counselling.
Can we bring the elephant very firmly onto the stage here in Salford? Because, of course, in the original version, in most versions of the song, there's no mention of Salford wind. It's interpreted differently by various artists. Why is this?
Smoky wind.
It's smoky wind indeed.
Smoky wind is
Sulphurous,
wonderful.
according to Rod Stewart.
Salford doesn't sing well, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Sorry, Mike.
Shot down in flames. There was an apocryphal story going around. I'd love you to put it to bed one way or the other, about Salford Council disapproving of what we're told was the original lyric of Salford Wind, and they asked Ewan if he could replace it with something more environmentally acceptable, shall we say. So after you just said doesn't sing very well, how apocryphal and irrelevant is that story?
I never heard it before.
Nor have I.
Before now.
That's
Somebody made it up
genuinely...
day before yesterday. I didn't hear it until now. But it's a good question. I'll have to think about it.
Okay, I'm sure you'll give us an answer later on. How, this is something that fascinates me. I hope I'm not going to embarrass you now, Callum, if you've sat stage with your mum all this time. The two of you, he chased you. You were younger than him. You were very feisty. I've seen pictures of you, and you're still feisty now. And eventually managed to get you, whether you got weary or not. But you did love each other very much for decades. How did that sustain itself?
Oh, we did love each other, definitely. He's my work soulmate, absolutely, and my living with soulmate. He was easy. I found it easy to live with him. I don't know if you did,
No.
Callum. But it worked largely through the work. We worked well together. Now, I never heard the drafts of his songs. When he turned up with a new song, it was always finished, even though I did question one of them. But I would take a new song to him, and he nearly always had some suggestion. Like my signature song is I'm Gonna Be an Engineer, and it was originally a very gloomy last verse. I took it upstairs to him, because I only had 2 hours to write it in, because I was in the middle of doing the accounts, and he was in the middle of writing a script, and he came down, he said he needed a song for the Year of the Women. And so I stopped doing the accounts, and I wrote Gonna Be an Engineer, which is full of words. And it had a very gloomy last verse. And he just said, excellent, Peg, bad last verse. Go downstairs and be hopeful. So I came back upstairs and wrote it. So I used him as a wall to bounce off, but he didn't use me. We talked a lot about writing songs together, and then he'd go off and write his version. I'd go off and write mine, So with Ecology, I wrote Wasteland Lullaby, and he wrote The Vandals. Very different songs, extremely different songs about the same subject.
Callum, what was it like his Father's Day today? What was it like growing up with a famous dad, and a dad who certainly wasn't conventional really in any way?
I don't know. There's a lot of mythology about me dad, and, the whole folk fascist thing. He was very opinionated. Well, he was a Salford boy, so he would be. It's like you, Mike.
Thank you.
It's a compliment. Yeah. The thing that people forget is that they wouldn't see is that he was a very tender, loving dad. He was all heart. So he was a great dad, but he was a right old bugger. He really was an old bugger, and he was so opinionated to the point that when... because I grew up with folk music, I grew up with their music, but I also grew up with the Beatles and Grateful Dead and rock and roll. So when I saved and bought my first electric guitar when I was 14, we had a huge fight about it, because he had this whole
I'm
kind
so
of
sorry for that.
intellectual thing about it being a bourgeois thing to have an electric guitar. And it's like, for God's sake. So it was tough. But as far as famous... No, I mean, you're not aware of that. It's because he was a very big fish in a small pond.
Mm.
So you're not aware of it growing up, really.
Do you think, Peggy?
He was a big fish in a small pond out of choice. He didn't want to be a small fish in a big pond. And he did a good job of that. He really did. He set his own rules, and we set our own rules, even though in our very singing of songs, we often did not follow those rules. That is a subject which I would love to really work our way into. But one of the grievous things about him going, quite apart from him going at all, was the huge repertoire in his head that he took with him. Quite a number of songs that he had never recorded, and things that he had to say. I wanted him to write a book about the folk revival, and I'm very glad that he didn't, because I think it would have just sparked more and more arguments about something that has no definition anymore. And by the way, I'd like to thank our signer. You're doing a lovely job.
And keeping up.
Do you know you've got quite a personality, Peggy? Nobody would ever describe you as a shrinking violet. And Ewan was equally feisty and sparky. How do you, the two of you, meld those egos and those emotions together when you're married for decades and performing together?
Well, nobody ever saw it, but he was a shrinking thistle. You know, you just didn't get a chance to see it. He was a very insecure person, extremely insecure. He hadn't been in a restaurant until he was 20. And he immediately went insecure whenever we went into one. He had what we called his restaurant voice because he immediately felt as if he was the center of attention. And his restaurant voice was very formal. We used to joke about it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The posh voice.
But the question being two egos living together for that long. They were very different. Your talents were in different areas.
Ewan would not recognize who I am now. I don't think so.
Yeah, he would.
Ewan would. We'll go into that on the way back home today. Yeah.
Do we have to?
I think possibly I shouldn't say this with your wife present.
She is.
I know that. She's nice. She's lovely. But when you're...
Jesus, my mum's hitting on Mike.
Sorry, Viv.
When an older man is with a younger woman, I think you're very aware that you have to keep up. And as he got older, he found he couldn't keep up. And that really grieved him. A lot of the things that he did were because I was younger and because I was so opposite to him. We were opposite in every possible way, in class, in sex, in our musical knowledge, in playing instruments, in the way we approached life, in American and English, although he always said he was Scots, but he wasn't.
No.
Yeah, he could say he was born in Ochterarder. Everybody knew he hadn't been. And I said, why do you say that? He says, I was born in Ochterarder.
Is that why you're Callum?
Yeah. And my brother's Neil. And my other brother's Hamish. And my sister's Kirsty. And my other sister's Katrina. It's all Scots.
You were going to be named Sorley after Sorley MacLean, until I said, no, you can't go into life with that Sorley, because my father wanted to call me Euphrosyne, and my mother put her foot down. But we got on because we were opposite, and because we gave to each other what the other one didn't have.
You know, when you look back to his performing, whether it was songwriting, and I just want to, very quick, I just want to hop back a bit. On the play front, George Bernard Shaw was a fan, and yet Ewan just gave it up after a while and stopped playwriting a part of his life. Why do you think that was?
Well, in Joan Littlewood's book, she really laments that Ewan took to folk singing, and she didn't like what happened to his voice when he started singing folk songs. I think you come to a time when you want to change things that you're doing, and power to you if you can do it. Right now, you called me a multi-instrumentalist. I am not anymore. I have arthritis in both my hands, and I can't play what I used to play. So I'm simplifying. This is not that Ewan simplified from theatre to being a singer and songwriter. I think maybe he realized, as Callum said, that maybe he was a better songwriter, and I think you're absolutely right there.
And he was a fabulous singer.
Mm.
He really was.
Yeah.
In what way, Callum?
He just had this rich, treacly voice, and he could reach the back of a room, and he could hold a song, and he could tell a story. Mm-hmm. He was a fabulous singer, and that's what's kind of forgotten about him a bit more.
There are two large elephants here at Salford Docks, Media City Darling, today. One of them is the Salford Wind, the other one, and I don't want to spark a family fight here, but Peggy and I have had a conversation about cover versions of Dirty Old Town. So let's get the one that everybody, I think, is aware of, certainly worldwide. That's the Pogues. So I know that Callum gave it a wave of approval. I know that Peggy and I have had a conversation back in the day that is not quite as approving. What's your thoughts on those cover versions? The Pogues, Dubliners, Rod Stewart, et al. Peggy?
You said that your father was opinionated. You never said that your mother was opinionated. But
That's
she is.
because you're here.
I love all of this with you, Callum. This is great. Just don't do it when you're doing 80 on the motorways. He's a brilliant driver, by the way, which his father was not.
So, about the song then.
About the song.
Thank you, Callum. I couldn't do that. It's your mum.
Back in the room.
Okay. As usual, I've forgotten the question. Oh, yes, cover versions. It's an interesting term, cover. Are you covering something up? I never learned the word until I found that I didn't like what Roberta Flack did the first time ever. But I have learned to listen to them and say, okay, this is what they are doing with their way of singing. With Dirty Old Town, I do feel that it's lonely. But these days, young people are lonely in a different way. They go to music and they go to clubbing. But the way that Ewan MacColl was lonely, it was right for him. And it's a fight that I have with myself when I hear cover versions where they're stamping it out and there's drums and there's all of these things. But this is a way of saying this is who I am to the people who do those, who sing it like that. And that's what the Pogues did. They sang it for Dublin. They didn't necessarily sing it the way Ewan MacColl wanted, but so what? It's just
There you go.
Callum, your thoughts without sparking a row?
Well, without sparking a row, I always think that you and Dad had that folk thing, so it was songs done in a different style, drum and bass, full band. You never really related to that particularly, so I have a different attitude to it. I think, it always pisses me off. Never mind my dad's songs, but you know when you hear a really great song and then somebody does a cover version and completely changes the tune? Well, great. You've got every right to change the tune as long as it's better. But it's quite often worse, and you go, why? Why did you change the tune? But, everyone gets stuck on what they're familiar with, and it's like a comfort blanket. But I like a lot of the versions. I'm just glad they're done.
I was going to give you, a quick... Go on, Peggy, sorry.
Well, if you want to hear the worst version of First Time Ever, go to my recording. I've got your pens and paper out. My recording of First Time Ever on Folksploitation. It's a dance track. So I've done that. I've been there, done that, the same way as with a male and a female partner. I've been there, done both.
It's brilliant, by the way. I mixed it.
But in a devil's advocate way to both of you, those versions, particularly the Pogues, brought the song in a way to a worldwide audience.
Absolutely.
And gave it that profile that enabled people to discover the original and fall in love with it.
Yep.
Well, what Ewan would have said to that was the Madonna, the famous painting, was only for art critics, but put a mustache and a beard on her and more people would like it. That's what his view of it was, so, oh, poor bugger, he's dead and gone. What we call him the old bugger in the family. And it's wonderful that we're talking about him in complimentary and in these contentious terms.
And a conversation like this with you two on stage, I've got to ask a question. In my tiny way, I fall into the same category. That your dad was from a proper poor working class background. I don't think you ever lose that, no matter how well you do. But your kids, and same happened with my kids, they have a middle-class lifestyle because you've done okay, or all right, as we say in Salford. What was it like for you, and even you, as life went on, that your lifestyle would have been something your dad would have thought of, and your husband as really bourgeois, you know, and not for him what he would have expected? How do you view that?
How long have you got?
Well, truncated version. We'll have to.
Not very long. It just happens, and I think that it's social mobility. Oh, God didn't like that. Oh, are you all right? Yeah, it's a difficult circle to square, that, and he never squared it, is the short answer.
A number of his friends married middle-class women, middle-class girls, and he asked his cousin, John Logan, who always went out with middle-class girls, and John Logan said, "Middle-class girls are amazing. They're well-fed."
And on that.
Yeah.
And on that, so just how
that is tragic. It really is tragic when you think of what slum means now. And when Ewan came back and met his friends, like when he goes to Aberdeen, he immediately starts changing WH to F because he listens, and then he doesn't imitate. He just falls in with it. Whenever he came back to Salford, he fell into the way of talking just so easily. It was there as a foundation under him. He never tried to become middle class. I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
If
But
I
he
can-
wanted to live like middle class people. He didn't want to move back into Salford. Some of his friends did and stayed and worked and made Salford a better place. But he didn't do that. He was terrified of Salford and he loved it.
How important is it, though, that song, and we're recovering it and we're rediscovering it and taking possession of it here in Salford because of, in a way, its worldwide appeal and its heightening image as the years go on? How important is that Salford now is getting the recognition of that link with his dad, your husband, and that song?
Well, any good song, it's nice that that happens. It might be nice if whenever you sing it, you say this is a song about Salford, rather than just singing it. And we always expected, once First Time Ever hit, I always expected Dirty Old Town to be next. But it's gotten a better way because people changed the words and the music of First Time Ever. The first two lines of First Time Ever are not what Ewan wrote. I don't know how they came to exist, but Dirty Old Town still has the tune he wrote. It still has the words he wrote. And maybe it has those because everybody sings it together and they all have to sing the same words.
And I think it's great that people know that it's about this place, but is it a pub trivia question? Just being devil's advocate, it has a real sense of place to anyone from here, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a reason why in all of the cover versions it's not Gasworks Croft, it's Gasworks Wall or Factory Wall, because in Dublin they don't know what a Gasworks Croft is. So you change it for your dialect, for your locale. So, yeah, I think it's brilliant that
So
everyone
did they
knows.
sing Factory Wall twice? The first line and the third line?
Gasworks Wall, Factory Wall.
Yeah,
there's lots of different
you get wall twice rather
yeah.
than once.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end of our conversation. It would seem that God might have not liked us for a moment or two, but He's kept the sun on us for nearly an hour, and you've been here listening to us for an hour, which I think is really lovely to see that you've got the patience and the fact you stood up. So I hope you don't mind if I ask you to give yourselves a round of applause for being here and taking part in this. There's an amazing version of the song that Peggy sings that you're going to be hearing, hopefully, in the media quite a lot. Kate St. John is Peggy's daughter-in-law. The version with the BBC Philharmonic.
That's Neil's wife,
Sorry.
not Callum.
Sorry, Neil's.
Does it matter?
Anyway, taken aback. But the version with the BBC Philharmonic is absolutely lovely. But I'm going to, in a second or two, I want to hear Peggy and Callum sing for you, which is, for me, the highlight of what we've done. But can I just very quickly say that this is my hometown. I was born here in 1947. I could never imagine that, thank you, I could never imagine that I'd be here with these two luminaries and with this absolute legend speaking to you on what was Salford Docks about a song written by a son of Salford. For me, the emotional content of that, the love of that is priceless. But we are going to hear some singing. But before we do, can once again give a massive round of applause, Peggy Seeger and Callum.
And Mike.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I will depart the stage now and let the artists perform.
A touch more guitar, Dimitri, just a little bit.
1, 2, 3, 7. I found my love by the gasworks grove. Dreamed a dream by the old canal. Kissed my girl by the factory wall. Dirty old town. Dirty old town. Heard a siren from the docks. Saw a train set the night on fire. Smelled the spring on the smoky wind. Now, dirty old town. Can't hear you. Dirty old town. Clouds are drifting across the moon. Cats are prowling on their beat. Spring's a girl in the street at night. Dirty old town. Dirty old town. When I first saw Salford, Ewan took me to Coburg Street. Cobbles that you couldn't walk on. And there were the ends of cannon all along the road. Good thing to use cannons for. Lamp posts and children playing on them. Women out washing their front stoops. So different to anything that I had been brought up in that I was very good courtship. He's got to show you something different. You can't just have what you're used to with the guys that came before. I'm going to make a good sharp axe, shining steel, tempered in the fire. We'll chop you down like an old dead tree. Dirty old town. Dirty old town. Dirty old town. Dirty old town. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you. Now,
Well, this seems like a good song to do. I've never sung it before, so you have to bear with me. This is another dad's song. It's another song that was written here in Salford that's kind of, well, it is about Salford and those hills that are 20 miles over that way. He wrote this in 1932 at the age of 17, which I only found that out last week, which is gobsmacking. And in 1932, that's when it really was landscape with chimneys and dirty and grimy. And working class boys and girls from this place, if they wanted some R&R that wasn't going and sitting out of the rain in the library, would hitchhike or get a bus, go 20 miles that way out to the Pennines and walk on the hills if they could. The problem being that a lot of the moors, notably Kinderscout and Bleaklow, were privately owned. So they'd face walls of keepers who would keep them off the privately owned land, which was kept by the great and the good for grouse shooting. The great and the good, like, I don't know, Rishi Sunak? Just saying. Boo indeed. So, he wrote this song for the mass trespass, where thousands of them went out, challenged the keepers, and that paved the way for the right to roam movement, and it's why we can now go out there and walk on those moors. It's got a chorus, which the whole point of this chorus was that thousands of people would walk up and down there singing it. So if I attempt to bawl this away on my own, it's going to be a bit out of character, so you're going to sing it. And now we've only got about 5 minutes, so if you don't pick this up really quick, you're just going to get this chorus over and over and over and over and over and over again. It goes like this. I'm a rambler from Manchester way. I get all my pleasure the hard-worn way. I'm maybe a wage slave on Monday, but I am a free man on Sunday. That's not very good Salford friendly, is it? So I'm a rambler from Manchester way. I get all my pleasure the hard moorland way. I may be a wage slave on Monday, but I am a free man on Sunday. Are you ready? We're going to try again. It's like schoolmaster, isn't it? On a Sunday. I'm a rambler from Manchester way. I get all my pleasure the hard moorland way. I may be a wage slave on Monday, but I am a free man on Sunday. I've been over Snowdon, I've slept upon Crowden, I've camped by the Wainstones as well. I've sunbathed on Kinder, been burned to a cinder, and many more things I could tell. My rucksack has oft been my pillow, the heather has oft been my bed, and sooner than part from the mountains, I think I would rather be dead. We go. I'm a rambler from Manchester way. I get all my pleasure the hard-worn way. I may be a wage slave on Monday, but I am a free man on Sunday. The day was just ending, and I was descending down Grindsbrook just by Upper Tor, when a voice cried, "Hey you!" in the way keepers do. He'd the worst face that ever I saw. The things that he said were unpleasant. In the teeth of his fury I said, sooner than part from the mountains, I think I would rather be dead. I'm a rambler from Manchester way. I get all my pleasure the hard-worn way. I may be a wage slave on Monday, but I am a free man on Sunday. Well, he called me a louse and said, think of the grouse. Well, I thought, but I still couldn't see why old Kinderscout and the moors round about couldn't take both the poor grouse and me. He said, all this land is my master's, and at that I stood shaking my head. No man has the right to own mountains any more than the deep ocean bed. I'm a rambler from Manchester was fair as the rowan in blue, and the blue of her eyes matched the June moorland skies, and I wooed her from April till June. On the day that we should have been married, I went for a ramble instead, for sooner than part from the mountains, I think I would rather be dead. I'm a rambler from Manchester way. I get all my pleasure the hard Northern way. I may be a wage slave on Monday, but I am a free man on Sunday. So I'll walk where I will, over mountain and hill, and I'll lie where the bracken is deep. I belong to the mountains, the clear running fountains, where the grey rocks rise rugged and steep. I've seen the white hare in the valley, and the curlew fly high overhead, and sooner than part from the mountains, I think I would rather be dead. I'm a rambler from Manchester way. I get all my pleasure the hard Northern way. I may be a wage slave on Monday, but I am a free man on Sunday. One more time, everyone. I'm a rambler from Manchester way. I get all my pleasure the hard Northern way. I may be a wage slave on Monday, but I am a free man on Sunday, unless I drive a van for Tesco. Damn the gig economy. Another good reason to vote in July, I think. But thank you for the weekend, Salford.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it.
Almost went off my chair.
Callum MacColl. A great rendition of the Manchester Rambler. As your bonus, Peggy Seeger. And Peggy has something to say, so obviously. Always.
Always. Save not the best to last, save the most stupid to last. Now, I would like you all to shut your eyes, please. Shut your eyes. Shut them. Thank you very much. You can open them. I just wanted you to share my pain at getting up. With your eyes shut. Share your pain. Where the heck did that come from? If anybody wants to share my pain, they can have some of it. Anyway, thank you for the weekend, Salford. It's a great invention. Wonderful. Thank you.
Peggy Seeger. Just very quickly, there's a Harold Riley exhibition on at Salford Museum and the Invisible Cities exhibition. Just wanted to get out to you today. I'll do more of that in the future. Once again, Peggy and Callum, wasn't that absolutely magnificent? Thank you, God, for the sun.
Found my love by the gasworks croft, dreamed a dream by the old canal, kissed my girl by the factory wall, dirty old town, dirty old town. Heard a sigh
Saw a train set the night on fire. Smell the spring on the smoky wind. Dirty old town, dirty old town. Clouds are drifting across the moon. Cats are prowling on their beat. Spring's a girl in the street at night. Dirty old town.